We're live. Hi, Suhani. Welcome to Venture with Grace.
Hi, Grace. Excited to be here again.
Oh my God. So to start the show, I would love for the audience to kind of know you a little bit more. You started your career. Actually, I think one of the most interesting thing is like, you also started your own company before joining your um climate impact investing fund also a nonprofit. Maybe we could talk about like, the founder journey for your company. And then you were originally from India. Maybe we could talk about like, how did you kind of like started your own company after working as an investor?
Sounds good. Sounds good. So I think by background, I was born and brought up in Mumbai. I'm a third generation engineer. So I think engineering was something that came pretty naturally in the family. After doing my material science from IIT Bombay in 2011, I joined Deutsche Bank and was working in their investment banking division. It was early 2013 or 2014 when was the first time I heard about the situation of menstrual hygiene in India. And I actually felt deeply ashamed that at the age of 23, I had no idea how half of the world was menstruating and what challenges they were facing. So it
Mhm.
was more like a moral imperative that, I should do something about it, given the networks, given the background that I have. Can we build machines to produce sanitary napkins at low cost and increase access to the community? So that is something that I started in 2015, actively ran the company till 2022 end. And then I moved to Stanford a couple of years ago and moved to impact investing right after.
I wonder, so how I know that you guys were selling like pads or like, face masks and like, all these kind of stuff. Like, I feel like that's such a interesting niche. Can you talk about like, did you source from India? And then like, what was the differentiation between that and that? Like, I think when we first chat at the like at a party, it was like you mentioned that like India doesn't have that before, right?
Yeah. So I think when we started, less than 12% of women in India were using sanitary napkins. A lot of women were using homemade solutions because of three reasons. Mainly, sanitary napkins that were commercially available through mainstream brands were fairly expensive. Secondly, access was a challenge. So the closest medical shop was like a few kilometers away. So people without
Mhm.
access to mobility and public transport would find it hard to go and buy something which was a regular need. And lastly, overall, the awareness for menstruation in general was very low, and there were a lot of taboos. So it was hard to sell products or create awareness about menstrual health products. So those were like top three reasons. But I think a lot of things changed then. There was um, since we started uh, from 2014 to 2022, when the latest stats were collected again, almost 30 to 40% women started using sanitary napkins. So a lot changed in a decade. It was partly to do with some of our manufacturers. So we were basically manufacturing machines that we would sell to local entrepreneurs, nonprofits, government agencies to set up their own manufacturing units in their districts and increase access to pads. So you basically cut down 4 to 5 layers of intermediaries and bring down the cost by 40%. And that is and since the manufacturer is only focusing on their local area, they go deeper in terms of rural access to schools, to communities, and create a local distribution network. So there was a whole ripple effect beyond increasing access to pads, but also increasing awareness, increasing jobs in the local community. So it worked out well. On your second question, in terms of raw materials, initially a lot of materials would come from China, but eventually, as the local production market improved, there were many raw material manufacturers in India for all different types of materials, including compostable materials that started uh, propping up, and that created the entire ecosystem to increase access to pads.
I wonder, so like when you were doing that, like so like when I did some investing in China back then, like and then like in like 2018, I feel like there's like a revolution of like, I feel like there's a shift between like, back in time people were really trusting the Dior or like whatever. Like I'm talking about like, because I did like consumer investing and then a lot of the people who are just kind of like starting the beauty brands um China, like, it's cheaper than the original. I know that like, they China manufacturing like L'Oreal stuff or like some other like, top brand stuff that's actually manufactured in China. And then those brands would just go like approach these like legacy players manufacturer to like produce their own stuff. And I saw that's like a huge trend. But I think what I'm trying to get is like I think the distribution and then the playbook to like distribute any consumer product in either India or China is like very different than the US. And I feel like maybe there's like a giant shift like of mindset. So I think at the beginning, the people have to convince the normal human beings like, you don't have to buy Dior or like you don't have to buy like, Chanel to like make sure the stuff is good. Because like I think in China, like people have a misconception of like if it's super expensive, it's really good. But if it's like cheap, it's not good. But I think you have to kind of like brainwash people to be like, hey, if you buy like a drugstore brand, like the equivalent of a drugstore brand in America, it's kind of also can be really good, the product itself. And then that was like a huge shift. And then like the founder that we're looking at, she was like kind of like making her own like influencer community to like tap into the micro influencers, like the people with like 10K 50K followers on like these different platforms to really like grow the brand. And then I feel like that's something new. But maybe we could talk about like, you mentioned that like you would sell these like manufacturing machines to like governments and like, local factory and stuff like that. So like maybe we could talk about like, what was the fundraising process kind of look like. And then I know that you kind of grew the company to like over 50 employees. um to sell a product that's like kind of like you have to kind of educate people that you can use this, and then plus like you have to cut down the cost, and then you have to, you know, I guess like deploy it to the general society. Like, who was your target user? Is that the people age between like 15 to like 25, or like what was that kind of like?
Yeah, I think you touch upon a very interesting point in the consumer evolution. And both in India and China, with a population of a billion plus,
Mhm.
there are so many segments to the market that it almost, if a product is good, you'll find the market somewhere. So you need to see what is the segment that you want to address. And I think for us, it was looking at the segment which was either not using sanitary napkins right now or using it very infrequently because of cost. And that was the market segment that we had. But you're very right. I think in that duration, around 2018 or so, there were thousands of sanitary napkin brands that got created, and with all influencer marketing and targeting different segments of the population, teen focused brands with a different packaging and different messaging, which is more around puberty, to more focused around heavy flow, post pregnancy. So there were like a whole range of consumer brands that got created. And that was something that was interesting for us as well, because we were supplying these machines. So the more brands that got created and more local niches, there was more demand for machines and more custom machines that we could make. So if you want to make something which is slightly different looking, we can, because we were locally manufacturing all the parts, we could actually do so. Um, so I think in your question of around fundraising, it is a complex market. It was technically B2B2C or B2B in an industry which was femtech was not even a category in 2015. And how do you convince investors that what is this complex model? And now being on the investor side, I can completely empathize uh, on those conversations. And secondly, I think even in my own network, it was mostly tech investors and people who had invested in the first wave of e-commerce in India. A lot of the investors were men and had never seen a sanitary napkin. So it was a very interesting conversation that how do they assess the quality of the product is good, etc., before seeing sales numbers. So it was challenging. So I think for our first fundraiser, seed round was reasonably easy to do given the network of IIT Bombay, and it's very, very solid. A lot of good startups have come out of that ecosystem. So we found angel investors to pool in capital and get started. But I think the challenge really started when we started going to our Series A, because that is when you have to define what is the category, which industry do you really fall in into multiple things. And after almost pitching to 100 VCs who were mainly tech VCs, I realized this is not the right segment, and we will not have that same level of growth that a SaaS company is going to have. So who is the right investor who has the patient capital? And that is when we started exploring more impact investors, family offices. And there was a whole new category of funding that I wasn't aware of before I started, was non-dilutive financing for impact startups. And in effect, we raised more non-dilutive capital over the last 8-9 years compared to equity funding, because there are initiatives like USAID, Grand Challenges Canada, DFID, etc., globally, who want to support women's health and increase access to health and hygiene products. And we could leverage that. And I think that is something that I wish I knew earlier, before I pitched 100 times to so many different events where it was not really a good fit. And just want to shout out to Acumen Fund, which was one of our first institutional investors, which comes with this mindset of patient capital and patient investing, that these companies will generate return, and there's a impact return as well, but you need like a lot more patience compared to returns or exits in 3 to 4 years.
For sure. How, like, maybe we could, I want to double click on the impact investing side, because that's also could be like a good segment into your current investing job. Is you mentioned about like there's a lot of like non-dilutive capital. Like in the US, I only heard of like, different grants for the science foundations. So like if you're doing something scientific, people are doing that. And then I've heard of like women-led fund that invest in women founders, that they would raise from like different like grants or like philanthropist. But maybe we could talk about the economy, like or like economics behind raising from these kind of funds. Like, why do they exist? Is that just like, people who are super wealthy trying to help people, or is that like they're trying to avoid taxes? Like, how do you kind of like frame it in like a, obviously like it could be both, right? It could be like, I'm trying to, make a positive impact to the society, but also it's saving my tax. But how do you think about like, the fundamental or like the kind of like reasoning behind this circle? Why do these capital exist? And then like, how do people effectively tap into these kinds of capital as well?
Right. So I think initially, or like many decades ago, philanthropy used to be more like giving money to universities, setting up a building in your name, or very tangible outcomes to things.
Mhm.
With the new generation of capital or wealth transfer to millennials and Gen Z, which is happening right now in legacy businesses. Um, People are also looking to do something more interesting with their wealth and philanthropy, and have a very startup like mindset.
Mhm.
And I think they do want to see what is the multiple on their philanthropic capital that can be generated, not just financially but also in terms of impact. So you can give money to one person to create access, or be a teacher to one student, versus create an app which can actually reach out to thousands of people at the same time and leverage one teacher's access to multiple people, and make it in a way which is more equitable, which um, maybe includes different languages at the same time. So there's so much more that you can do with technology and create access. So there's a new wave of philanthropists who want to do more. So those are really good ones to partner with. If you are a social startup founder, you have a technology, you have some leverage that you're building. There are a lot of individual family foundations who have different niches that they focus on. Some focus on climate, some focus on water, some focus only on women's health. So you can find them, and they help. Their whole goal is to solve one problem, for example, take you from stage A to B when you are ready for the market. So like you talked about the scientific financing, there's a lot of financing that happens through government ecosystems also to de-risk your technology, so that you are at a TRL 4 5, that you can start doing pilots, and that is when commercial capital can flow in. So commercial capital may not have the risk appetite to take you till that stage. The same is applicable in social impact also. There is a bare minimum level of awareness, information, access that you need to give to people before people understand that this is a product that is actually beneficial. A lot of times the consumer that you're trying to go to doesn't have the paying power to experiment with different products if they don't know if the product works for them or not. So
Mhm.
covering or de-risking that piece is interesting with grant capital, and you can do a lot of programmatic work. So apart from like actually selling the product, there's a whole segment of things that you need to do to increase awareness, and that is where you can also use non-dilutive capital. So there's definitely like I think a tax benefit if you're uh, deploying any capital to philanthropy, but also what is the leverage to philanthropy is something which is interesting that you can do with investing or backing startups.
For sure. I have so many questions there. I think like one of the things is how do you find these people? Like even like so yesterday I was at a MIT pitch day and then it was, like, so interesting because like, I've seen some, like, family offices, and then, a lot of people just don't feel comfortable to disclose any information about the family themselves. They have, like, a name that's, like, very generic or, like, very, like, not even related to that person, and how do you kind of, like, vet if so and so is actually doing impact investing or they're just, like, saying, "Oh, we do impact investing," and how do you kind of ask like, because a lot of there's, like, no information on a lot of these things too, I guess, like, first of all, like, if you're a founder in the impact domain or, like, social space, like, how do you kind of, like, create, like, a playbook for yourself? And this is, like, a lot of the social impact related things, like, selling pads or something, like, they don't meet the venture scale. Or how do you kind of, like, convince the investor? What does the investor actually want to see? And what kind of benchmark should you kind of have for each stage? Because I think for fundraising with like a traditional VC, the good part is like you kind of keep the benchmark very like stable. Like you have to hit certain amount of revenue, you have to hit certain amount of like profit margin by so and so by some point, maybe like you triple, double, like or these like kind of like benchmark is like there. But for impact investing, like how do you kind of like make sure that they can see the result? And then what result is good? Is that like just like we help like, 100K people, or like is it more towards like, at one point we have to be profitable to continuously like working on this?
Right, right. So there were two parts to this question. One is how do you find these people who are interested, and because most of the times it's not like family offices are actually promoting their office quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I think through organizations like SV2 and Silicon Valley Social Ventures that now I'm a part of, there are multiple families who have contributed their capital, and it's a pool of capital that we deploy into impact investing ideas. So finding organizations like SV2, there are multiple of these groups in different parts of the country as well as the world, is how you access some of these family offices, and people may contribute to your venture after, if they really like it, and these are good access points to meet like-minded people. The second thing, which is very similar to any other VC, is actually doing a background check with founders in the similar industry. So if you're working in women's health and there are maybe 7 or 10 predecessors that you know who have been working in that space, you can reach out to them, that who were the uh, angel investors that backed your family offices that came to you. So that's another way to reach out to them. I think your next question is more interesting also in terms of like impact investors and what is the lens that we look at. And there is truly like a misconception thinking that we are concessionary, or we would rather not care about returns or impact returns because we are prioritizing only impact. I think uh, there is a differentiation here. So it depends on what is the solution that you're building. So if you're using a SaaS product to uh, make ESG monitoring or carbon credit tracking better, you will still be, the expectations will be similar to like the 3x, 3x, 2x return, because it's a SaaS product and you're selling to corporates. And if there's a large market, that is something that you can build and grow upon. So I think that expectation stays. But if you're in a hardware manufacturing industry making sanitary napkins, that is not a growth rate that you can expect, because there is a time to build, there's a time to sell, and there's a whole cash flow cycle that one has to be mindful of. So it would be similar to any other hardware innovation. But the thing that we have to look at is TAM, both in the sense of the $1 billion market, at the same time, the number of lives impacted, or the overall carbon emissions that can be abated, the amount of water that can be saved. So what is that maximum threshold, and is that substantial? So if we are providing nonprofit capital which is more patient, it has a higher threshold on impact, so the impact has to be deeper. It can't be like, oh, I'm selling this product to a million people but their lives are changing by like 1%. It is just like a good to have. It has to have some significant impact in access or affordability or something that was not accessible to an underserved population, or is something that is environmentally substantial. So that is the um, benchmark. And I can share a little bit about, for every industry that is now different. So for example, if you're looking at solar, is it significantly better than the current photovoltaics if you're creating a new technology? So all those things are very specific to industry again. And I would say impact investors use a very similar lens. I think a few other things that I can talk about SV2 in terms of our lenses is also looking at underserved founders and prioritizing our own deal flow, that we see more women founders, we see more people of color, that because statistically if you see the amount of VC capital that goes to women only teams or black founders is less than like, oh, for women it's less than 4%, for black founders it is less than 2%. So these statistics are pretty jarring, and those are things that we can focus on and also create an impact at the level of creating more founders from different backgrounds, so that there is an impact on the community and there is a value to diversity and founders solving different types of challenges when they come from different backgrounds.
I wanna maybe we could start with, Silicon Valley Social Venture Fund. How do you join the fund? And then maybe we could talk about like the concept of the fund as well.
Yeah. So I was actually very interested in looking at climate and health both, given my background as in healthcare entrepreneurship. And for the last 3 years, when I was at Stanford, I was taking a lot of courses at the Doerr School of Sustainability. And when you see the data, it is like, it is very hard to ignore. And you know that these are some of the existential challenges that our generation is going to face. And there is more that needs to be done in this space, absolutely. So I was looking at either joining VC funds that are working on climate or health. And I think the combination of both and looking at impact broadly is also interesting, because a lot of challenges are interconnected. So you can solve for climate and increasing energy access, but if you don't think of a lens of inclusion, you will again miss out on a huge population that has been left out of several other industrial revolutions. So I think there is a lens of impact that is super important, which kind of attracted me to SV2. So one of my uh, connections from the days of Saral Designs was actually a partner at SV2, and she mentioned that SV2 is a really kind and value oriented team and you'll really like chatting with them. So I had the conversation, and from the first conversation I knew that this is such a good vibe fit. And and that is super important, because you spend so much time with your colleagues, you really need to align on how you think and what is something that you want to back. So that's how I came across SV2 and joined them early, like a few months ago. It's been 3 months now at SV2. I'm leading their impact investing vertical, which we invest in pre-seed and seed companies, and look at climate, health tech, ed tech, legal tech, and also financial inclusion. So broadly, multiple segments of impact is something that we cover.
I wonder, so do you like, so when you're evaluating these companies, maybe we could talk about, we don't like, if you don't feel comfortable, we don't have to talk about the track size, but I'm just curious about like, when you're entering like to invest in like pre-seed, climate tech companies or, you know, um, just any type of like companies, like, so first of all, like how do you figure out like what is investable? Is that like, and then like what would be your benchmark on the ownership side? So since like, a lot of people are like, you lead, you follow, I would assume like this fund just primarily follow. But I mean I could be wrong, but like I mean how do you think about like the ownership, like how much you want to own, and then like what would be the benchmark of like investing, like it, like is the LPs that are like just they absolutely don't care about if our fund return whatsoever, or is this more towards like, oh, we may shoot for a venture like return, but like also I don't think it can be venture like return for some of the companies, like, or maybe it should for like I don't know, a 2x or something. Like how do you think about from the return side of things for the fund as well?
Yeah. So I think just to put a caveat on that. We have had 8x, 10x returns also in impact investing. So it is something that uh, is a misconception that these companies can never make any returns, even though it takes longer sometimes to generate these returns. If it's a deep tech hardware solution and climate, it will take 3 years to go to the market. So you cannot really think about
Yeah.
returns in 3 years. So I think those expectations have to be matched. But in terms of like, I can talk about we in generally in like pre-seed and seed stage, our check sizes are 50K ish, and we participate in rounds, and that is the check size that we invest in. But we also have our partners who are 150 plus families who are a part of SV2's network, and they can choose to invest if they really like the deal or not. So the round size may increase. We have a slightly different lens when it comes to ownership, and this may be quite contrary to what you would have heard. I think the aim is to be founder friendly, and we don't want to dictate terms. We don't want to take board seats or take more power than rather make this capital valuable to the founder. So many a times, the founder is also raising from like mainstream VCs, but wants SV2 to be on the cap table because they want to send the signal out that we care about impact, and that is something that we want to have that mission alignment going forward and give out that messaging to the broader market as well as the investor ecosystem. So that is something that we feel, and that's a value that we bring in rather than taking more ownership. The second thing is that there are some broader guardrails that we would not come in invest into companies which have already raised more than $10 million, because we don't think that the check size that we come with will make sense or be catalytic in terms of changing anything for them if they have already raised that capital. So that kind of determines the ownership as well as everything broadly. And I think given that we are not leading the round, or we are not the only investor that is coming in, the structure of ownership, etc., is taken care of by market forces in general. So we don't have to really push back on how much ownership we are taking versus not. So that gets solved there. So I think on your other questions on what do we don't have LPs, but we have donors who are very, very involved in the process of diligence as well as uh, our or portfolio performance, etc. So it is not like if we are an impact investor, we'll not care about returns. Having said that, if you look at average returns from venture industry in general, they are not that great when you look at the average space. So we are significantly better than the benchmark in general. I think it also tends to happen because when you're more founder focused and trying to see is the founder has a lived experience in the problem that they are trying to solve. Are they mission aligned? A lot of the uh, reasons of failures of startups due to the founder's lack of interest is something that we have already eliminated, or rather, reduce the probability of, given the lens that we come with. Then the sectors that we are looking at, within each sector, there are certain um, gold standards that these, if you look at these things, if these things are generally checked off at this stage, there is more likelihood of success. So those are things that is more specific to climate, to fintech, to health tech. Everything has a different metric. Also, we rely a lot on our own ecosystem of partners in terms of sourcing and experts. So apart from the 150 families that are a part of the community, we also have a lot of deal flow partners. Some of them would be experts on medical devices, some would be experts on like water technology, and we kind of try to source from them and also build our own expertise accordingly.
I wonder for the 150 families, like, are they, you mentioned about donors, are they like traditional LPs, like they expect a return and you got like the return back after 10 years, but like maybe for your fund, you take like 15 years instead of 10 years? Or would you say it's more towards like they donate and like they put the money in, peace out?
Yeah. So I think there's a structure called a donor advisor fund, which is a philanthropic. So basically, there's a philanthropic contribution that they make to the donor advisor fund. This DAF instrument can then invest into startups, and whatever returns that are generated from these startups go back to the DAF. So it pools back to this capital itself. So and doesn't go back to the original donor. So for the donor, it is a tax-free donation that they have made. And but the thing that I talked about was leverage, right? So instead of just donating $20,000, you see that 20,000 became 10x, and that 200,000 now can go into 10 more startups. So those are things that matter to the donors as well. And a lot of times the donor partners at SV2 are also LPs in other funds, so they are parallelly doing a part of their capital allocation to deep impact startups versus mainstream tech startups as well. So usually we have seen that the case that people uh, are also diversifying their capital deployment. Some of it is more philanthropic towards causes that they really care about and don't want that return back, but want that capital to broadly grow and grow the impact.
I have a question on like the donor side. Like, so how do you guys encounter the 150 LPs? Like, and then are they so like what would be do they like all come in like around the same size, kind of like a party round for the fun, or like do you have to raise the fund yourself, or like is this like a foundation that like you guys set up and then people just come in and be like, hey, donate? And how is like the fund actually started back then?
Yeah, I think SV2 is a 25-year-old nonprofit organization. So it has been in the Bay Area community for a very long time and well
That is a
known
very long
in the.
time.
I
Like
know. How
20
old are you, Grace? Are you 25?
oh god. Wait, are you 25? So
No, I'm not. But I think because of that, there is a reputation and a branding for SV2. So there are a lot of families that know about SV2 and have been contributing for almost over a decade.
mhm.
Those families do continue. And then there are younger professionals who came into wealth. So, for example, your NVIDIA stock generated returns, and now you want to not just go into investing into real estate or startups, but also have a portfolio of impact yourself. So those are families that then join, hear about us through word of mouth, or there are a lot of community engagement events that we do throughout the year in the Bay Area. So we invite friends of SV2, as we call them, and then they would, if they feel that this aligns with their philanthropic or impact goals, then they come and join us. So there's a whole range of capital. It is not like a membership, but it's more like what is your capacity to do, to give. So it can be. $25,000 is basically the median size at which people come in, but it can be lower or significantly higher depending on what is your capacity, how much do you want to contribute to impact.
For sure. What's okay, I mean, let's talk about investing, right? So, like, I mean, I know that you guys are looking at like climate, inclusion, like maybe a little healthcare. Like, what maybe we could talk about like, what are some major sector that you're looking at, and do you feel like you guys invest in AI at all?
Yeah, of course. And I will plug in your smart AI, you know,
You're
the
amazing,
awards.
Raj. I'm so glad that we're like last minute pulling it up. It was such a wonderful and unique and intense experience.
No, absolutely. And I think AI is almost ubiquitous in any industry that you're looking to fund. So I would say that almost half of our portfolio so far is climate tech. We have done quite a few healthcare investing, fintech, legal tech, etc. And I think almost 70-80% of the deal flow that we are seeing is AI right now. So even if you talk about inclusion, healthcare, I can share like a few examples that with voice AI and with the ability to train it in multiple languages, you are able to increase access to people on Medicare, Medi-Cal, who don't speak English as the primary language to be able to access some of the benefits, talk to a voice agent, understand more about insurance, understand more about what healthcare plan they are on. So there's so much that can be done with AI. So we see that this is such a ubiquitous force of nature right now that every industry is going to have a massive benefit of efficiency in their systems, and probably do something more also from an impact front, include more people that was practically or financially impossible to do before. Try to advance science, and that is something that I'm sure you would have come across so much in terms of discovery of critical minerals to chemistries for batteries, and there's so much more that you can do with leveraging data, leveraging AI, and do experiments much faster. So that we are seeing um, use of AI everywhere. But I would say that in terms of like broadly, the themes that we focus on is climate tech, healthcare, but with more focus on underserved populations or populations which are generally not well funded in terms of age tech, women's health, uh, communities that are reimbursed by Medicare or Medi-Cal. So, looking at different segments within healthcare as well. Within fintech, again, it is more towards financial inclusion. Are you able to give access to loans to people who are not traditionally supported by mainstream banks? Their credit scores are low. Is there something that you can do with AI to actually come up with a better metric for credit scoring and support them with their loan repayment, education, etc. In terms of financial literacy? So there's a lot that we are seeing right now, which is very encouraging. I think uh, this is a good time for supporting a lot of these startups and including um, um, social impact as a mainstream part of what AI can do. And it's not surprising that all like Anthropic, OpenAI, everyone has like a social impact team now, because they are actively seeing how nonprofits can use it, how social impact companies can use AI better. So I think it's also a focus area for these large companies to make sure that they partner more with these impact founders.
Mm. Maybe we could talk about the climate side. Like, what are
Yeah.
things that you're seeing as a trend? And like, I feel like lately, like I've seen a lot of the climate are shifting towards like robotics or like the supply chain of things because of like there's like an industrial revolution and like everybody is like kind of like building these like deep tech slash manufacturing companies and then you have experience in both of these space. What are some climate companies or like innovation that you're seeing in this space right now?
Yeah, I think one of the non-obvious trends is obviously data centers and everything to do around it, given that um, the need for storage is going to go up. There will be more data centers, and now they'll need more power. These are in different locations. So, how do you look at energy generation, which is more decentralized, maybe solar, maybe geothermal? So, there's a whole uh, range of companies that are supplying energy. Then there is a whole range of companies which help make these companies more efficient. So how do you find what are good geothermal sites? How do you do energy modeling to know what is a good site for solar, wind, etc.? So there is a whole tech play in that ecosystem. Then there's a whole construction play also. You're creating all these prefab systems, these steel structures to create data centers. How do you make them more energy efficient? How do you make them faster? How do you make them low cost? So there's a whole range of innovation in that ecosystem as well. And then water usage, how do you minimize use of water? So there's every new thing that grows, there's a whole climate play that
Mhm.
comes into that ecosystem. So that is definitely like the non-obvious one, which is growing, and almost every energy company is trying to address the data center energy need. The other few things that are happening as a with electrification, obviously, is the need for materials and innovation on materials, recycling of rare earth materials that is happening now, sourcing from different sources which are low concentration, and find chemistries or processes in terms of making them more cost efficient. Um, on the other front, there is immense amount of CO2 in the environment already. How do you capture that? How do you convert it into CO2 to X, which is X could be like your carbon fiber, nanotubes, or fats, lipids, etc. So how do you make sure that there is a carbon negative material that you're producing and there is a market for it as well, given the net zero goals for many large corporations, especially European ones that are still continuing to uh, uh, promote some of these carbon negative materials. Then there's a whole play in adaptation as well. And the more we see, I think it's crazy how many disasters happen throughout the year across the world, and from floods to wildfires to and a lot of it is becoming more and more frequent. So there's a whole ecosystem now in terms of predicting, in terms of rapid response, in terms of preventing as well. How can you get these signals early? How can you transmit them? How can you solve for them? So there's a whole set of startups that are coming in that space, which we find extremely interesting. And lastly, which is super important, is regenerative agriculture as well, given that the climate is getting warmer or there's water shortage. What are things that you can do in agriculture for food security? How can you make uh, more um, less carbon emitting meat in a way, right? So plant based versus low emissions in general. So there's a whole ecosystem there as well, which continues to be interesting. And so I think all of these are more from the climate side, but everything has a social impact angle as well. So I'll probably call out like two companies. So solar and electrification. So one of the companies that we have backed is Navajo Power. So uh, solar financing and solar installation is something that has been going on for a while, but how do you make it more inclusive? So Navajo Power is working in indigenous lands and giving 50%, 51% of the ownership of these projects to indigenous communities, so that it is not just that there is um, like a green source of energy that is available in these communities, but also the benefits of solar are equally shared by the community. We have a company called It's Electric that is providing curbside charging stations, but they are sharing the revenue that is generated by these charging stations with the affordable housing buildings that are generally closer to these curbs. So basically, the community is also benefiting from electrification. So there is always a lens of inclusion that we can have in these deep tech companies or these climate tech companies as well.
I have a question for these companies. So, for example, the curbside charging companies. So, like, do you have to compare them to other? Like, so I guess, like, first of all, like, do you have to source? Like, do you have to actively push these companies, or like, do you feel like because I think for like a commercialized VC fund, like everybody just like go out there winning the best, the most like marketable deals, right? But like for impact investing, like a ton of people just be like, hey, I heard about you guys. Let me come and pitch that kind of vibe. So, do you feel like the sourcing is coming from inbound or outbound?
I think it is both. And I would think that now there are enough impact investors, at least at the seed and pre seed stages, that there is enough uh, volume of deal flow that comes through directly to us through our ecosystem partners. So you would have gone to the MIT pitch day. How many did you see? A few social impact focused startups in that category?
One, like if they were doing water bottle, shout out to them. I think it's Anima or like that's the name. So yeah, you know what? I'll like make a note to make sure that like I'll like follow up with them. So what they're doing is like they put like the water bottle into like some sort of water bottle washing machine, but the machine is costing like a lot of money to produce. But I was just like in shock because I do think like your water bottle you can't put into washer and dryer, and then
Mm.
but like most people just don't wash them. Like this is like a kind of like a machine you put it in. It's kind of like I would say like a just like literally a washing machine for your clothes, right? Like you put it in, and it's just like you take out. It's like kind of like wash, but it's like a public service thing. Then like not the public service, but like it's kind of like a machine that's like let's say a park would buy, not like I guess like a human like
Mm.
you can put the machine at your home. But I think eventually they want to do it at home. But anyway, so yeah, keep
Yeah,
going.
so there you'll always see companies of social impact in every university pitch that you also go, and I think it was more natural. I think when I had started my company in 2014, from 2012 to 2014, I was thinking of like several social impact ideas, and at that time, the only startups that were getting funded were in e-commerce. So it just seemed like. There isn't a market to fund something like this. So I think now the tides have definitely changed over the last decade. There's so many impact investors, so many non-dilutive financing sources that founders can take more of this risk and get into uh, areas that ideally would not have been venture fundable, and now they can explore a lot more of these ideas. So I think from a sourcing perspective, there isn't really a shortage of good impact founders in the place. And also there are these big weeks like the New York Climate Week, SF Climate Week, where you or there is something happening right now in the Bay Area, which is around SoCap, which is on social impact. So there's a lot of like these communities that are getting built where people come together, share their ideas, and you get to meet people beyond your network as well. I think an interesting thing that you mentioned on washing and reuse, and it just made me think about the reuse economy as well that people don't talk about in the climate ecosystem. We have a company called Redish that is working with these corporate offices and taking all their dishes and just washing them in a very energy efficient and water efficient way and giving it back. So instead of using plastics and disposables again and again, there is like a whole washing infrastructure that they have created. And there are several companies in this reuse economy space as well. If you see these big events, these sports events in large stadiums, there are these cups that are now generally being reused, recycled, and washed and brought back to the ecosystem. So just on the washing idea that you were talking about, there's a market, but it's specific to certain industries where it makes more economic sense for people to buy expensive machines because the frequency of wash is very, very high. So it everything has a market. I think if we are able to find what is the beachhead, you can really make it work. So shout out to the company that you also saw at MIT. So there is definitely potential in there.
For sure. Oh, another company I saw yesterday was like, what were they doing? Oh, they were doing like building energy saving. So it's kind of like they use like a software to go into the buildings to be like, these buildings. I feel like it's because of like people probably just turning on the light overnight. So the building can look like it's light. Like, I mean, it's like, I mean, not, it's like, but it's like kind of like, oh, people are like working on it or something. I don't know why, but like, these like buildings that they always have night lights on, like for every floor. I'm just like so shocked. I don't know what if the company it just like think that's like the biggest like energy wasting, but so they basically just like use the software to like go into different buildings to like evaluate if your building is like using the energy efficiently, and then it saves you bills. So basically, let's say a building maybe every year they're wasting like 50K, or like they're spending like 300K on like just energy or like water or whatever, and then this company go in and then like kind of test if you can save money. So let's say if you save 50K and then they charge, let's call it like 25K. So it's kind of like they charge you a little bit, but also like to make sure that like you're kind of saving energy as well. So those are like some really interesting ones. But I guess like, do you guys like typically, I guess like, do you feel like the best deals are the one that you have to hunt down? Or do you feel like the best deals are just like they come to you? And then do you have to like maybe like fight with the commercial deals? So like for example, if a deal is like so popular, all these like top VC funds are like hunting them down. They probably have like great like people to choose from. Like how do you kind of like stand out, or like do you have to like win the deal in general?
Yeah. So I think a lot of deals are referred to us by our partners or our ecosystem providers. Those are typically the best ones because multiple of them are looking at it and it aligns with the metrics for multiple people. So there is usually that signaling that happens. But I think in terms of participating in deals, given that I think there are a few things, being founder friendly is a very big moat that we have. So given that in our entire process we don't take more than 3 hours of the founder to make the decision, so that's something that uh, we have like a 30-minute pitch, which is basically a pitch plus Q&A, then a 1 hour one-on-one with the founder with our diligence team, and that's it. And we speak to their investor, the lead investor, and that's the overall process. We do a lot of back end work ourselves to make sure that we are efficient with that 1 hour time. We are asking the right questions that we need to ask. We also work with the lead investor or other investors in the round to leverage their diligence so that we don't go and end up talking to the customer for the fifth time. So we do a lot of those things that make us getting into the round reasonably easier. And the second thing that I talked about, apart from being founder friendly, is also the signaling. So uh, it is a mutual fit. So if the founder thinks that, hey, we don't care about like small check size, we only want to go with like a million plus in terms of the minimum check size, and we really don't care about impact in general, so they are not the best fits for us even. So I think whenever we see that this is a great fit, they also see this is a great fit and want to have us on their cap table because that's the messaging that they want.
I wonder, so like 3 hours, you guys make the decision.
Yeah, like 3 hours, but it's not like 3 hours back to back. It's over a period of 3 weeks because scheduling with investors and
Yeah.
founders is also not easy. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be another milestone. I'll think about it. With AI, I think that's possible. So let's see.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure. So, like, how do you diligence them? So you mentioned like the lead investor will give you all the info, um, like how do you guys like help them afterwards? Like you mentioned, there's like 150 families. Are those family in different industry, and then they kind of plug you in, or how does that kind of like work? And then is like 150 families? Are they like ultra rich, or like are they more towards like just people? Let's say I'm a big tech executive, I have some money and I'm like gonna kind of put money into work. Like what was the kind of like general setups for, I guess, like from the winning deal perspective to um
Yeah, so I think you rightly touched upon the
diligence.
150 people in the Bay Area are fairly well resourced in terms of either their network or uh, them being in the impact investing ecosystem for over a decade. So there are mainly usually two things that founders need at a growth stage, and when they are pre-Series A or Series A, is like connecting with Series A investors, and the second is business development and basically finding the right people in different industries. So if in the 150 families there are people from healthcare, from climate tech, who are connected with the biggest ed tech company or probably worked with them, or so there is like a whole spread. So from sometimes business development is something that they can open doors and make introductions which are very hard for a young founder to break into, so that's definitely there. The second is introductions to other funds that can follow on, and that is something that over a period of 25 years it has been built organically with who are the next set of investors who are similarly value aligned, who will come and back these companies. So knowing that and making those introductions is also helpful.
mm, I wonder for like the diligence side, like do you have to diligence their financial, I'm sure financials or like technology mode. Does technology mode even matter? Since like I feel like a lot of these are like more towards like, how are you effectively helping the community? Um, what are some like things that are on your diligence checklist versus like a like commercial investor?
I think technology moat, or broadly, like there has to be a differentiation with rest of the world that exists, and that can happen because of the technology, their focus area, using this technology for a target group that hasn't been looked at before. So, and it changed things. So, for example, if you're using the same model, AI model for a different community, you need a very different set of data, and that eventually builds your moat. So even your focus on a different segment which has that demand that everyone is ignoring can be your moat as well. So we definitely look at differentiation. There's also a fairly detailed financial analysis that we do. We try to do like waterfall and see what the exit would be like, and even though in early stages a lot of it uh, is obviously so much dependent on assumptions, but we do so that we at least have an idea of what is the exit timeline look like, and are we comfortable with it? Is it like 5 years, it is 7 years, it's 10 years, or it is 100 years, it's never going to happen? So I think some of those things do influence the decision making, obviously, and we do similar analysis, but like I said, it doesn't take the founders time. So they have a set data room which is there for every other investor. We kind of leverage a lot of that. If similar analysis has been done by other investors, we leverage that, and we don't redo a lot of work. But effectively, things that matter to us is something that we try to squeeze in those 3 hours and get that information.
For sure. Okay, so I want to be mindful of the time. Maybe we'll wrap with a 1 minute fire round.
All right.
What's your favorite book?
Ah, such a good question. Sapiens.
Oh my God, classic. Who made the biggest impact in your career?
Oh, hmm. I think my mom, she's a nuclear scientist and has been working in renewable energy for so long, and at a time when women were not working in STEM. So I think I have a lot of pride of being her daughter, and she kind of influences everything that I do.
Oh my God. Who would invite you to a dinner party?
I would invite you to a dinner party. I've had dinner with you. You're very, very fun.
Yeah, we'll have dinner soon. Uh, where can we find you outside work?
Um, Biking on the Bay Trail with my son and my husband.
Cute. Love that. Okay, so honey, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was such a fun conversation.
Likewise, I really enjoyed this chat and getting to know more about how you think about impact and what more we can do. So, this is super exciting. Thank you for having me, Grace.
Thank you so much. Okay, let me quickly end stream. It's about